Hello everybody, welcome to this week's Wellness Way Quick Tip. I'm Dr. Patrick Flynn, the Hormone Whisperer. I'm so excited you guys are here. I love doing these things. I love doing these because we've got a great response so far with all of our secrets revealed. So today is something that is kind of, known well for the Wellness Way because we actually do our inflammation talks every couple weeks. So having the topic of our top 4 secrets for inflammation is very key today because I'm going to go a little bit more in detail. And I say, Doc, when you do an inflammation talk, it sometimes takes an hour and 15 minutes. Yes, but I'm going to go a little bit more detail because when you do that, it's more of a big picture. We're going to get some of the, once again, the secrets that I don't even teach at the inflammation talk. So here we go. This is the one thing I do talk about, and I love this. Time Magazine back in 2004 did a wonderful article, and I just want to point out the words here. It's kind of cool. The secret killer, okay? And I love this, the surprising link between inflammation, and then it lists a significant amount of conditions. If there's one thing, no matter what I say, there's one thing that every doctor across the country will agree upon. It doesn't matter if it's a dentist, it doesn't matter if it's a chiropractor, it doesn't matter if it's an MD, it doesn't matter who it is. There's one point that every doctor will agree upon. What is it? When you actually have and look at conditions, and that's why they list them, the process that contributes to it the most is inflammation. Okay, so then what's the secret? Okay, that's what we're going to really go over today because I want to show you my top 4 revealed secrets. Here we go. Number 1, inflammation is a normal response. Hold the phone, you just threw me off, okay? And what I mean by that is you said, Doc, you talk about the Wellness Way approach to inflammation. You talk about, for example, these things that actually contribute to disease. And then you turn around and your first secret is it's a normal response. Okay, like I said, the inflammation talk is a lot of, for example, big picture stuff. But let's break down the details. See, that's the great thing about being a doc. That's the great thing about being a Wellness Way. How we approach it is very different. We give you the big picture, but now how we look at it. So let's define it because it's really well defined. You can actually Google search it. You can look up on your textbooks that way. So let's kind of define it. We'll run through it. Is a part of a complex biological response of the body's tissue to a harmful stimulus. Okay, just by definition, for example, if you have a sliver, okay, that doesn't belong there. It's a harmful stimulus. You could actually eat something bad. That's a harmful stimulus. And the body responds to it. Here we go. Such as pathogens, damaged cells, or irritants. Well, there's the big thing right there. Ladies, if you put cosmetics on, that can create some inflammation. Just the natural change of your body daily will cause some inflammation. Why? Because the cells that you woke up with this morning replicate so fast that by the next day they're not there. So there has to be a change. That change is an inflammatory process. And is a protective response. Remember that. Involving immune system cells, blood vessels, and molecular mediators. So your body has to, in order to repair, in order to do anything, has to actually have an inflammatory response. For you to grow, there has to be an inflammatory response. Well, here's the thing. Then why, for example, that you look at most medical research, you look at what we talk about is, for example, inflammation can now lead to actually all these problems. The secret is the harmful stimuluses never go away. If you have some poisonous food, if you have some GMO corn, if you have some processed product, if you have some sucralose, if you have some artificial sweeteners, guess what? And you have that every day, your body's going to be in consistent inflammation and it's going to be in that immune response. Your body will respond to what you do to it. That's what it's supposed to do. It's genetically programmed for normalcy. Let me say that again. When you're born, is your lungs genetically programmed for abnormal or normal function? You guys know the answer. Every part of your body, if I went through it, is actually created genetically for a normal response. Well, guess what? That inflammation response is there. Actually, it's a normal response to any stimulus or even growth process that way. The bad part is, for example, is this. The stimulus is in most people's lives because they're not taught or they're taught they're okay or they're taught you can have them in moderation. That guess what? That it's okay. It's not okay because that long-term immune response causes a lot of damage. Number 2 secret, do not rice it. This is hilarious, okay? Because in 1978, I think it was, there was a Dr. Wilkins, okay, who came out with this whole concept of rice. Rest, ice, compress, and elevate. It's extremely well known. it has permeated the whole medical profession for a long period of time. They've adapted this. But I'll tell you right now, the rice concept will cause massive damage to the process, to your tissues, okay? And I'm even going to pull out some article that the doc who created the rice process actually even says, hey, listen, it may not have been as smart as I thought it was, okay? Now people say, doc, but if you twist your ankle, it starts to swell. It's extremely painful. Yeah, maybe it's painful because your body says, stay off it. Do you follow me? That's the part. They actually think just because it hurts. Well, doc, if I ice it and I get the inflammation down, guess what happens? I can actually walk on it better. You were never supposed to walk on it better right away. Your body has to heal. Your body has to bring those immune cells to that area where those damaged cells are and repair it. And that's why it's kind of cool. So I pulled out of his article. It goes through healing requires inflammation. Who said so? The guy who created the RICE acronym. He does. And it's kind of cool. He actually defines it pretty good. He was actually talking about working out. He's talking about if you work out, your body has to repair those muscle cells and actually grow them a little bit, so they have to inflame. So if you ice it right away, it's kind of interesting. You slow the healing process. Here he says, you'll have damaged tissues. The inflammatory cells, called macrophages, just an immune cell, releases hormones called insulin growth factor into damaged tissue. Because here's what happens, which helps muscles and other joints repair. However, applying ice to reduce swelling actually delays the healing process by preventing the immune system to release it. So, the immune system is going down there to help the tissue regrow from damage. And by putting ice on it, which you now do, is what? You slow the healing process down. If I smash my finger, it has to repair, and so the inflammation process is evident that way. So your athletics, guess what? Actually, I can tell you right now, I live in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I know this is going to drive some of you guys nuts, but I always have to say this. I live in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I've had experience with a professional football team. Won't name their name, okay? Okay? And what happened is players came in. What do the trainers tell them to do? They twist their ankle. They do something. They're like, get an ice bath. I'm like, get in a heat bath. Jump in the sauna. Jump in the hot tub. Trainers freaking out like crazy, okay? Because why? Because they're not looking at the body and how it works, okay? And their whole thing was, but when I ice it, I can get back on the field. Yes, you can ice it and get back on the field faster, but you actually cause damage to those tissues and the slowing of repair. Guess what else happens when you actually have inflammation to a swollen ankle? It gets red. It gets warm. A fever is an inflammatory process. You lower the fever, look for our articles about fever, you delay the healing process because it's going after that pathogen. It doesn't matter if it's a bug or a virus. It doesn't matter if it's a twisted ankle. Now imagine this. Your heart. You do something bad to it. It swells up. Most of our inflammation, for example, we don't even know it's there. Okay? So be careful on this concept. Number two, it's silent. That's why I brought up the heart. It's called the secret killer. Most of your inflammation you have no idea about. It's very evident in heart disease today. Most heart disease happens, and by the time they find it, it's because they had some symptom that came up. Okay? But by that time, they've developed it. It's destructive. There are some blockages, things like that. And the one thing that all cardiovascular people will tell you, cholesterol doesn't cause heart disease. Chronic inflammation to the arteries do, and it's very silent. I wish that the minute that you had any inflammatory process, that you would have some symptoms because you could direct yourself to that area. Most of it is not. And the fourth concept in Secret Revealed is this. It must be tested properly. Most people don't test inflammatory markers because it's a general testing. One of my favorite tests, but very general, is C-reactive protein. Ask your doctor to measure it. They usually don't because why? Because it doesn't show much in their predictive aspect of care. So they go, not going to really test it, okay? But I want to show you there's much more detailed testing with it that way. Once again, you can do tumor necrosis factor alpha. Why am I getting so detailed? Because you can use this. I would like, just like the thyroid one I did before, I will list these. I'll put a sheet and list it below that way. Take these into your doctor. Go to LabCorp. Go to any question you want, or any lab you want. Did I just say question? I did, okay? Go to any lab that you want to and actually have them done. Heck, most labs will do them without any doctor's approval that way. You can just get the labs done. What else? Fibrinogen. That right there, for example, is immensely important when it comes to vessel disease that way. Oh, well, my goodness. Young men I'm not kidding. In your 30s, you should start getting that actually done. Because why? Because the heart can actually cause some damage, get some inflammation in there, and start to create some damage long term, okay? ESR, very common. Most doctors will actually look at ESR. Actually, ESR is one of the first inflammatory tests that were out there, and that's why it's done a lot, but it doesn't really do much, okay? And it's actually very, very non-sensitive. That's why you can have a lot of inflammation, and your CRP and your ESR can be normal. Homocysteine, another good protein that's released in the blood when there's inflammation. A couple of my favorites are actually interleukin-6. Once again, what is this on a quick tip? It's an immune response. Remember, inflammation is an immune response. And one of the markers that come up first is actually interleukin-6. It can be done on a blood test. You can run it with any doctor out there. Actually, it doesn't have to be a Wellness Way doctor to run these. You actually just read about these, jump on Google search, look at all the medical testing that's done out there. It's just that they're usually never done because it's not applicable to current medical practice. But one of the coolest tests that you can do, that we do a lot, is actually food allergies. Having high food allergies is just nothing more than your immune system is way supercharged. It is. Actually, what happens is that's why you can actually seem to react to a ton of things. You know how you can actually tell, this happens a lot? If a woman's pregnant, their immune system shifts. And that's why a lot of women say, hey, listen, I never had allergies before, now I'm pregnant, I have allergies. Because why? There was an immune change. But you can create allergies later in life as you continue to be more inflamed, and more inflamed. Okay? So remember, go back to our top 4. Number 1, inflammation is a normal response. If it's left there for a long period of time, that's when it becomes damaging. Do not rice. You'll delay the healing process. It's silent. You don't know it's there. That's why I built the whole Wellness Way clinics based on one model. We don't guess, we test. But guess what? It must be tested properly. It's not tested properly today. Actually, it doesn't even mean anything to them. Even though they agree that inflammation is the major marker, it's just they don't know where it comes from, so they just treat the end effect that way. So find a doc that understands that. Find, for example, how to test it properly. And what I want you to do is this. Get it tested and bring it to an office that knows how to get rid of it. Because if you don't, go back to the Time magazine article. Here's one thing. It's the secret killer because they're not searching where inflammation, that chronic inflammation is coming from, and everybody's ending up. So it said on there, the surprising link. It's not a surprise. It's just that they're not addressing the things, and so they're surprised because their care doesn't address it properly. My name, once again, is Dr. Patrick Flynn from the Wellness Way Clinics, and thank you for watching our Wellness Way Quick Tip this week. We'll see you next week.